Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 3 of Marvel's M.O.D.O.K. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, M.O.D.O.K's so celebratory because it's like, oh, my Republic, it came true, but it ended up just being a dream, and it's obviously his weekend with the kids. And the fact is, I love that he spent like 4 hours trying to get up a bloodstain, and it's like, why did the previous owner have to be a killer? The bloodstained killer. This blood is so juicy. I'm like, I've never heard blood referred to as that. So obviously, Lou is all about the place because I didn't know that was the term for that. Murphy beds and stuff that like go up into the wall. I didn't know that was like the term for that. But he's all about it. Melissa is not. I love later on when like those rats are kind of scattered in M.O.D.O.K. Like, make sure you keep an eye on those rats so we can like know where exactly they are when we're capturing them later. But they're literally trying to drag Lou away. But also it's like, oh yeah, like we have this like perfect like conference thing that's happening. You're the guest of honor, M.O.D.O.K. It's like I sent you a whole bunch of emails at your Outlook, and it's like I don't use Outlook because I'm cool. Which I'm like, is there actual email shade? Well, people like, oh, ew, you use Yahoo? Ugh, disgusting. Like, I'm curious, is there actually a legitimate thing to that? I don't know. Like, the one Yahoo account I had is long gone because I just it went inactive for so long. They're like, yeah, your email's gone now. So that was interesting. Regardless, tangents and all that aside, they show up there, and it's like, oh, this guy, you know, it's like, oh, I want to check in. He's like, oh, I'd love to. And it's just like, he doesn't know who you are. Of course he knows who I am. I'm M.O.D.O.K. He doesn't need to be told how to even spell it. M-O-D-K, M-O-D-O-K, no C. It's like, yeah, see, he knew exactly who I was. I don't get also why. I don't know whether, like, Austin put him up to it. Why that dude is such a dick that, like, the first time, like, oh, we're talking to him, he's at a normal volume, and then later on, he's yelling at the top of his lung all this stuff, because later on, he's like, oh, I'm sorry we couldn't hook you up with all these pornographic things that you wanted to go visit. Like, this long list of pornographics. It's like, why are you yelling? Why are you being a dick about it? It's like, oh, you can't get into the jacuzzi or pool or whatever if you've had diarrhea within the past 14 days. It's like, we never found out why he was doing that. Like, I could only assume Austin told him to do that, you know, because it turns out, like, M.O.D.O.K. thought, like, oh, I'm the guest of honor and everything, which I love the celebrity guest. I was like, is it going to end up being a hero? Lo and behold, it's Iron Man, which I think is so interesting. Once again, he's the only superhero we're seeing pop up so far. But I love the fact is, he's like, oh yeah, I send out hologram. You guys paid me to be here. But the fact of the matter is, that's why I sent my hologram, because I don't support anything you're doing. Actually, right now, I'm out there trying to dismantle your horrible, terrible company. And one of the guys like, oh yeah, he's talking about us. Yeah, that's us. He's talking about us. It's like, that's what I was like wondering. I was like, how are you going to show up at like a villainy group like that? It's like, oh, because it's like, I'm going to take your money and use it for good to dismantle your organization. It was definitely interesting. Even later on, it's like, oh, like, we are getting Iron Man as a, well, I think it was hologram Iron Man as a guest again, rather than giving it to M.O.D.O.K. Austin's such a dick. Like, the fact is, like, he takes these little jabs at M.O.D.O.K. It's like, oh no, you're the guest. Like, you're the guest, and it's our honor to help you improve. It's like, oh, you're such a dick. It's like, yeah, I wanted to hear what you had to say about how great my speech is. And it's like, it ends up being interesting, like, because Melissa's the one that ends up helping him. It's like, you got to listen to everything I say as I teach you how to basically dismantle everything. Like, she teaches him the long game. That basically, she teaches him how to, like, analyze people and, like, the people he's with, like, later on playing golf with, which that's the weirdest, craziest golf, but I guess that's supposed to, quote-unquote, be, like, rich people golf in that universe or whatever. But, and I took away from it being like, oh, I guess the episode is trying to imply that the most evil thing and most diabolical thing in existence is a teenage girl. And that's the message it seems like the episode's trying to get across, because she knows how to manipulate and dismantle people. She even talked about, like, oh yeah, there's this girl she knew that, like, what's her name, Roxanne, and it's like, oh, she, like the color purple, but that's my color. So basically, to mess with her, she got someone to dress up like, Grimace or whatever, and just stand inside of her bedroom window, and now she doesn't use the purple. She actually hates the color purple, and I'm like, that's dark and messed up. But I also love that the entire time, like, Lou's off doing his own thing. Like, it's like, ooh, like, he's enjoying the amenities. It seems like, based on what we saw from him in the episode, he literally didn't leave the hotel room. It's like, oh, here's all these mattresses I'm gonna bounce between. Oh, like, is there anything else I could literally get in here? It's like, other than what you don't have. Like, we give wheelchairs, and he's like, fit as many as you can in here. It's like, I love that he's just off in his own little world. But I was wondering if this ended up, and it turns out it did be kind of an aspect of the episode, is Melissa's trying to get her father's approval. And, like, she actually enjoyed spending time with him because for the first time, it was like he was actually listening to her, which is obviously his biggest issue. He's so self-centric and, like, very, like, narcissistic. He cares about the people in his life, his son, his daughter, his wife, obviously, but he kind of takes them for granted, and he gets so focused on his own mission, his own ambitions. Because, like, yeah, she's the one that helped him sway everyone in his favor, but the moment he got there at the party, it's like, nah, he didn't want to listen to her anymore because it's like, no, I know what's better. I need to take like fast action, and so he's going to open a portal, cause chaos, and be the one that like saves the day. Initially, I'm assuming the first thing that popped on the list, he was like, too gooey or gross or something like that. I was like, is that a scroll or something? I couldn't tell what it seemed like that was. It looked more like Green Goblin, but I think that's probably what the scrolls more traditionally look like in that. I mean, I guess once again, a lot of this stuff I wouldn't know anything about if it wasn't for the MCU, you know. But nevertheless, the portal doesn't actually go to like the brood that he wanted to. I don't think they're the same things, but they kind of remind me of those things from season 5 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think it's the same species. I think that's a completely different species. But it was like those creatures they were dealing with, like kind of relatively near the beginning of the season that were kind of like running amok on the ship. I don't remember what those things were called. It kind of reminded me of the brood. Kind of reminded me of that. I don't know if those are the same species or not. Like I said, it's been a while. But other than that, like obviously Melissa was just kind of heartbroken because it's like, right, her dad was supposed to listen to her, but he didn't, and now he's kind of done his own thing. And it's like, hey, the creatures that actually do come through are party animals, so it kind of works out to his favor of like, yeah, now I'm being celebrated. I'm the one responsible for being the life of the party. But then we find out later on these things basically conquer by basically making people party to death. So basically at the end of it all, by the time M.O.D.O.K resolves everything, like it seemed like there was only like 2 people alive along with the board. So I thought that was fascinating because it seemed like literally everyone else died. So, obviously he tries to get Melissa's help, but Melissa's kind of like, no, and cusses him out. When she's like, oh, the language. And she ends up talking about, like, there's an anagram for, like, her name. And he was like, no, you know that's not why that's not what your name stands for. We named you after Melissa Etheridge. But I thought was so interesting, like, what she breaks her name down to be. It's very similar, you know, it's like, oh, like, basically her whole mission is, like, the cause anarchy, essentially, because that's what, like, the A in her name stands for. So that was interesting. I wonder, does he actually have like, does he actually have a child in the comic books, or is that just something that like they made? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's meant to just be fun, so I'm sure they're taking a lot of liberties with the character, but I'm wondering, does he actually have like have a daughter named like Melissa or something in the comics? I doubt it, but still. Some of that stuff I need to look into just to see, because you never know. Comics are crazy. You never know, like, a what-if type of situation, considering there are what-if comics. Like, there could be something of that nature. You know, I mean, comics have been going on for a long time, like, and there's like a lot of weird stuff in older comics. You're like, oh, that was a thing at one point in time. Regardless, tangents and all that aside, but I like that M.O.D.O.K was able to use, you know, what Melissa taught him in this particular case. He was able to examine all of these creatures and find a weakness, and it's that. I also love that it's like, oh, like, it's like, oh yeah, the background's fading away. He's like, oh, next time you put it up, he's like, I'd rather have it written out, but also next time you do it one letter at a time. He's like, oh man, I always love it being presented like that. But their weakness is they are insecure in their own right, that they basically want to be the life of the party. So he basically kind of turns them against each other. Like, they have to be like, no, I'm the wilder one. No, I'm the wilder one. They end up all taking off their shells, and he proceeds to do the thing that Melissa's like, oh, you don't have to destroy everything. He's like, no, people keep telling me I don't need to, and here I am mind blasting and killing everybody. So Shadow Board's not happy. Things didn't go the way he wanted to. Melissa kind of hates him. Lou was kind of fine with it. He's like, yeah, see you in 2 weeks, Dad. So other than that, he had actually examined Melissa and sees like, oh, seeking her father's approval and hates herself for it. And he was just like, never mind. And obviously it's like, a deal is a deal, like, right. He's like, I had fun on a horse golf course, but at the end of the day, you know, a deal is a deal. You don't have to come back next time. I mean, you hope that she does. But then I love that line. It's actually a really sweet line of, you know, I guess it's the long game from here on out. And it's like, oh, that's, you know, it's like, there is kind of, you know, amongst all the weird and craziness, there are like sweet moments like that. Also, this episode makes you go like, man, I bet you if the other M.O.D.O.K from the other that got erased when the timeline changed and everything. It's like, I bet you that M.O.D.O.K is going to wish he had actually killed Austin when he had the chance, just because obviously, like, and that was also the question I had too, was like wondering whether or not like Austin was going to reveal himself to be some, like, is he just the douchey? Like, he springs up moments of like showing that he is a villain, because even Melissa was like, oh yeah, like the fact is he sent the email to an email address he knew you wouldn't, like obviously brought you here with misleading words and kind of embarrassing you. It's like, yeah, like his whole point is to make you look bad. Even though like it's pretty obvious, but it was like, there are moments where I'm like, it does seem like he's definitely villainous in some regard, and it's like at the end we find out like, oh, here's another tech piece from M.O.D.O.K, and it's like the board, who or whatever they are, they're something. Maybe comic people know exactly what that is. I have no idea what the hell that is. But it's like, right, soon enough, like, M.O.D.O.K will outlive his usefulness, so they're kind of getting what they want. Like, every little thing Austin does that forces him to, like, I wonder, like, what's the plan to get that time travel device? Did they know that that's the route things were going to go? So they were kind of hoping, but granted, it backfired. To be fair, like, the gems from the device he used to power it is still in college M.O.D.O.K's face, so maybe that still can apply in some shape or form. So it just seems like kind of like a villain's working behind the scene, like, oh, I'm manipulating you, I'm being a dick, and forcing you to use your technology because I'm trying to take all of it for some grander purpose. So what that is, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But I was actually kind of surprised about it. I was like, oh, so there is like a main overarching plot there, because there's a sinister stuff happening in the background type of thing. So I'm really interested to find out what that actually is and where all this takes us. Especially, like I said, the Melissa and M.O.D.O.K relationship, because it's not just his relationship with Jodie he has to fix, so with his daughter. Once again, Lou seems like pretty content with everything. He's kind of an oddball anyway, so maybe he's fine with the way things are. Or maybe we'll get a future episode where it's like, no, it's some like true bonding and mending of fences in their regard. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where everything ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.